Becca, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you.
All right, you got to help me out with your name. What's your full name?
Okay. Well, legally,
Yes.
Rebecca Lynn Wolfgang, but de Paredez is
Paredez.
Yes, the additional last name.
And
Do I need to tell you about that?
We'll get into that later, I suppose. Right. And
yes, de Paredez.
You are at Holy Rosary.
I am. Holy Rosary Catholic Church in Rosenberg. Make sure you don't forget that part.
Oh, yes, that's right.
I'm just...
Adrian, who we had on the show, the principal
yes.
of the school, kind of had to clarify that one as well, just in case.
Well, I work the front phone sometimes, and we do occasionally, not anymore, not as many anymore, but used to get is this Holy Rosary downtown? So.
I think with Google, I think it's become a little easier.
I think I just got really good at telling him, no, Rosenberg.
Do you have people coming up to the office like, oh?
No, they don't drive all the way. No, thankfully, they don't drive all the way to us and mistakenly mean to be downtown.
They just follow the GPS and wherever it takes them.
That is true. And I have noticed when I'm somewhere else, and I'm really bad with directions, so I still use my phone GPS, and I have to type in Holy Rosary, and it wants to go to, I don't even know how to say it, Milam, M-I-L-A-M.
Milam?
Is that how you say it?
Yeah, I think so.
I'm sorry, I'm not from Houston.
So. You're not? Where did you grow up?
That's a loaded question. So my dad and my mom are former Army, both of them. So I never really grew up more than 4 years in any one place. So.
Oh gosh, you're like me and Herm.
Both of you?
We're Navy brats.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and Navy, my dad, he retired in Pensacola. The Navy base was there, but he had a lot of Navy friends, and they said, if you're going to retire somewhere, do it in Pensacola, Florida. So that's where I went to high school.
Can you name all the places that you've lived? Off the top of your head?
Yes. So I was born in Belgium. While my parents were stationed in Germany. They were visiting my mom's sister, who was stationed in Belgium at the time, and then I came a little early. So my sister after me was born in Germany. Then we moved to Washington State, where my younger two siblings were born.
Okay.
We lived in New Mexico for 4 years. That's where I did most of my elementary. And then we moved to Thailand. That's where I did junior high. And then my dad retired, so we moved to Pensacola, Florida. That's where I went to high school, my first year of college. And then they discerned joining a religious order, and they moved to Texas, to Robstown, Texas. And then I followed, so...
Wow.
Yeah. So we've been kind of all over. And I mean, in the middle there, I lived in Wyoming, Virginia. I was kind of a nomad as well.
Being born in Belgium, do you have citizenship or do you?
Oh, so supposedly when I was 18, I could have chosen dual citizenship, but I did not. So no, unfortunately. I was born in a Belgian hospital because it was so sudden and, surprising. So I wasn't born in a military hospital over there.
Oh, wow.
So that's why I could have chosen to do that. I didn't even know who I was when I was 18, let alone if I wanted to have dual citizenship. So I think it would have been cool.
How old were you when you moved here to Texas?
Okay. They moved down when I was 17 or 18. I had just started college.
Okay.
They had convinced me. I had actually applied to University of Florida in Gainesville, and I got accepted. I was going to live with my best friend. My parents convinced me it'd be cheaper to live at home and go to University of West Florida in Pensacola.
Okay.
And so I did that, and then they just discerned into the religious order and left me. So I had to live on campus anyways in Pensacola.
What order is this?
I love it. Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity, SOLT. And they are lay members in the order, and now they actually help form new missionaries. They're all considered missionaries. It's a missionary order, so yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So I'm sure you've heard of Sister Miriam Heidland.
Yes.
Miriam James, yes.
So when when they're in town, let me know. Maybe we can get them on the show.
Oh my gosh, they would love that. But they're talkers like me too, so be careful what you wish for. But they would love that.
Gonna have to make sure we got a lot of data free on the camera. Is that what you're implying?
Yes. I love them, but I'm very often getting mistaken for my mother these days as I get older, which is a compliment. Don't worry, Mom, it's a compliment. But people hear us and they're like, is that Mona or Rebecca? Mona or Rebecca? And so, I mean, it's an honor.
So were you raised Catholic?
My mom was actually born Greek Orthodox and came in, into the full Catholic faith. And my dad was kind of, no. He's a convert in the military, actually, is when he became Catholic. And so he was very much your stereotypical convert, very passionate about his faith, became a catechist and a youth minister, hence, I think, where my inspiration came from. He was my high school youth minister. And then my mom was always teaching, always volunteering at church. So I think it would be probably my junior high school part of my journey, which is where our faith came more alive. I did get confirmed while we lived in Thailand in 8th grade. And my dad, again, was a catechist there as well. So, yeah, so they were not, they're more passionate, I guess, later in life as Catholics, yeah.
Everybody has their own journey.
Yeah, but it makes it very colorful and fun.
Have you ever had any like issues with like your confirmation paperwork, and since it's out of the country, or first communion paperwork and all that kind of stuff?
But the birth certificate, that one, I've had to request that from the military documentation, and so. Well, this is a fast forward, but when I needed to get my annulment from my first marriage, that was something I had to find all of those, or I guess reissue the certificates, and all my sacramental paperwork. And I'm telling you, being a military brat, you're asking for your baptismal certificate from one church, your first communion, your confirmation from another, your wedding from another, and then the birth certificate, having to get that from the military took a little bit of time.
Yeah, it's like different countries, different states, all over the place. Yes. At least now we've got the internet.
I have to say that's where I found most of my addresses and contact information for those things.
Yeah,
so,
imagine having to do that just over the phone.
Yeah.
That would have been a huge headache.
Oh, no, that sounds terrible.
So you say that your mom, your parents, they're really good talkers and
yeah, they are. They're good talkers and good teachers.
Did you see a future in youth ministry when you were young? Or?
Oh my gosh. I think I wanted to be a youth minister when I was in high school.
Really?
Yes. I'm not kidding. I went to Steubenville South conference in Alexandria, Louisiana every summer of my high school career. And then I worked it the next 2 summers between college years. And I had a passion for ministry. And then I've always been drawn to high school, the high school age. I just feel like you can really talk to them. And then music ministry as well. That kind of happened at the same time. My dad has been playing guitar since I was a child. He tried to get me into guitar when I was in 4th grade. I was not having it. ADHD and a classical guitar with my foot up on the step. No, thank you. But when I started college, I got myself a guitar, and YouTube existed. So I dove in. Yeah, I dove in. So that's where... Yeah, and my music ministry and my youth ministry passion began then.
So did you at any point ever think of religious life?
Oh, well, I did walk up during one of those calls. I totally did. I totally did. Yes, at Steubenville. I felt compelled that I needed to at least be open. I honestly, I felt like it would be an incredible life to be a religious sister. I assume that's what your question meant.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And so I didn't know where God was going to take me. I had always wanted to be married and have kids, but I also wanted to make sure I was being open just to wherever God would move me in either direction. So I'm glad that my parents were very supportive of all vocations. That I think is helpful. And I have 3 boys, so, one of them better be a priest, I'm telling you.
So during that call, did you have a boyfriend at the time? Or
no, I wasn't allowed to date in high school. I definitely dated still, but I was not supposed to. Sorry, Dad. Dad wanted us to focus on our studies, and he knew boys were trouble, so we weren't allowed to date. So no, I had a couple of... I swear, I really tried to tell my dad, they're just good friends. It's a boy and it's a friend. It's not my boyfriend. But not at the time of that call, no.
We had a guest that happened to. He had a girlfriend, I think, and he just went up.
At the same Ouch. Okay, so I will say that I have a priest friend from Pensacola, and he and his girlfriend, I thought for sure they'd get married, and they were both super Catholics. I loved them. We did so much youth ministry stuff together. And then he did discern the priesthood and had to break off that relationship. And I mean, God bless her. She's an incredible woman, but it's still hard. When God takes them, you can't even be mad, or you're not supposed to be.
And sometimes you think, they would have been a great Catholic family, a great example of the faith, but there's a different...
Well, but I'm going to tell you, and I've said this since I was in high school myself, I want a priest that would make a good father, and I want a father that would make a good priest. I really think that I want to be able to see them in both and know that, obviously, I mean, they're called to one or the other, but it's nice when you can look at somebody and say, I don't know what you're called to, because you would be a great priest.
Either or,
and you would be a great dad. So
that's
I do
awesome.
think that's cool.
Now, after college, did you go straight into youth ministry?
So my first year at University of West Florida, I went into music ministry. So I joined the Catholic campus ministry, but I started to go to school for education. And so I was doing some kind of, I guess not interning, but I was working at the preschools, and I was trying to kind of gauge what age I wanted to work with.
Okay.
But I thought I'd be a teacher full-time is what I thought, and then do, youth ministry kind of volunteer wise. And I'll tell you, to be honest, I saw how hard my dad had to work to pay the bills when he was a youth minister. I mean, he got a night job as a security guard. 1 year, we barely saw him. He was working for the church and had his night job. And so I knew that I couldn't support a family on that, in that vocational direction. So I wanted to have a full-time job and be able to do youth ministry, as a, I guess, extra after hours
or
type of
a
thing.
volunteer capacity.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Even when I went to Franciscan University, I will say that everybody who was majoring in ministry of some kind was double majoring. So they were
really?
double every single one of them, men and women, guys and girls, were double majoring so that they could always provide for their families, even if they got a ministry job after graduating. So you kind of have to plan for that, especially if you want to have a big Catholic family.
How did you get to youth ministry now, the way you are now?
I love that journey for me. So I guess if we're being honest, I have been to probably 5 colleges. I never could stay anywhere. And so I was always kind of majoring in education. I did some semesters down in Corpus Christi after my parents had moved. Our Society of Our Lady of the Most Holy Trinity wanted to start a college, and it wasn't quite accredited yet. So I took some religious studies there, and also with the plan of, I wanted to teach in a Catholic school. I thought, okay, there's where I have the best of both worlds.
Yes.
Okay, I am teaching in a Catholic school. I can live my faith, and then I can be involved in youth ministry after hours. Unfortunately, after 3 semesters, the military had told my dad if I wasn't in an accredited school, I'd lose my health insurance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I kind of panicked. I went to Texas A&M Corpus Christi for a semester so that I could be seen as being full-time student. I was able to keep my health insurance. At that point, I had been to 4 colleges. We don't have to talk about all that. And it was Franciscan University that was the only university that would accept those 3 semesters of unaccredited college courses. And my sister had already done her whole college experience up there, my 2 years younger sister. And so I joined her up there, and I intended to major in religious education and psychology. After 5.5 years of school, I got a little burned out, unfortunately. I will say, I'm going back, Mom, I promise, to finish, but I do not have a bachelor's degree yet. And so I would say that I'm from the school of hard knocks, I guess, experiential training, life experience. So I ended up meeting my first husband, not at Franciscan, but outside the school. Got married, started having children. I unenrolled with the intention of continuing after the babies were a little older. And at that point, it was just mom life for me. So, we had 3 boys, 2 years or closer 2 years apart.
And it just takes over your life.
It really does. And I'm in such awe of moms that are going to school while they have little ones at home, because I could barely keep my life together with 3 toddler boys running around. And I loved that part of my life. I actually loved being home with them. It was when they were a little older that, our family kind of broke apart after almost 7 years of marriage. And at that point I said, oh my gosh, I have to get a real job. I have to support my 3 little kids. I mean, they were 6 going on 7, 5 and 3
so
at the
still
time.
Very young.
So young. Yeah. And I was at St. Justin Martyr at the time. I had been volunteering there and had gotten a part-time job as an assistant youth minister. Prior to that, I had been volunteering at Epiphany of the Lord in Katy, and I had been just volunteering with their youth ministry, which I never really wanted to stop doing. So I was just kind of bouncing around churches, volunteering where they needed me. And I got a call from a friend who was the youth minister at St. Justin Martyr, asking if I'd be interested in assistant youth ministry. Oh, I was like, yes, please, that would be amazing. But when the divorce happened, I couldn't pay my bills with that. And so I was working part-time for youth ministry and part-time at their preschool. So all my kids were there at the preschool, which was a blessing at the time. And from there, that still wasn't cutting it, to be honest. And a friend of mine offered me a job in oil and gas. And so I considered that a gift from God. I got a full-time job in safety and security of oil and gas, and was doing a lot of administrative work, but it was taking care of me and my family.
When you got divorced, did
yes.
it rock your faith in any way?
I was so mad. I was just mad. And I use this in a lot of my talks now, especially with teenagers. God can take it. He can take that anger. And you're allowed to yell at him as long as you don't stay there. But I stayed there for a little while. And, I was the one at home with the kids, with the 3-year-old crying, where's Daddy? Why isn't Daddy here? Why doesn't Daddy live with us anymore?
Gosh.
And I felt like, and I love using this to talk to teens, because I felt like I had done everything that I had been asked of for God. I felt like I was following the rules. I felt like I was a good Catholic girl. I had done what I was supposed to do. How is this happening to me? Divorce was never going to be in the cards for me. That I was determined to live that vocation, that sacramental vow, that marriage, and for better or worse, I probably would have endured a lot just to keep the marriage intact. And so when he left and I couldn't stop it, it was kind of like, I look up at God and say, how did you let this happen? Honestly. And I look back at that part of me and I think, man, I'm kind of disappointed in my own response, but it's a part of my journey. And
sometimes you just need to say that.
Yeah. And yell at him a little.
Yeah.
Just to get that. Yeah. Just to
get it out of your system.
Get the pressure out. Yeah. Yeah. So I will say that going to Mass was extremely hard. I did not stop going to Mass. I couldn't always receive communion because of the life that I had kind of let myself fall into through anger and, just frustration and disappointment and loneliness and loss. But I would still go to Mass, but I would cry. I mean, just seeing the families. And we never know what's going on behind closed doors. But when you sit in Mass, and sometimes, the kids are with me every other weekend, even to this day. And so they're with me and then they're not. And they're with me and then they're not. But it's always just me, And seeing the, happy families sitting at Mass together, going to communion together, celebrating the sacraments together. All 3 of my boys got their first communion with their dad sitting in the back with his new family, and I just, it's still a little bit of a point of sadness, So yes, did it rock my faith, I would say I'm going to tell you, I never wanted to leave the Eucharist. I knew above all that I was going to get my strength from him. And so I would not receive if I knew I couldn't. I would get myself to confession, and then I would go to the Eucharist. So I knew I could never, ever live without that, without him. I will say that we went to divorce care, me and the boys, at Grace Fellowship in Katy, because at the time, 7 years ago, I could not find a divorce support group at a Catholic church.
Oh, wow. And
I think that's really sad, especially in this day and age, and with our percentages in the Catholic Church being just as high as the rest of the world, unfortunately, the divorce rate. And now you're seeing them pop up, but they had a divorce care program. And I really believe that saved me and the boys. So they had a kids part and an adult part. And some of my best friends I met were through that group, just helping each other through it, supporting each other through it. And it was still Christian, which is awesome, you know. And it would have been nice to have a Catholic component, because I don't think I approached annulment for a year or two, because I thought our marriage could be saved, you know, even though he had remarried. You know, you kind of live in a delusion if for the kids' sake, you know, you kind of hope and pray. So I kind of avoided the annulment process for a while, but it would have been nice to have that kind of component in the divorce care. I'm sorry, what do you call it? The divorce care program. It would have been nice to have Catholic teachings.
So they have those now, those programs.
I would say it's kind of slow going, but the divorce care program, I believe, since then has updated to include a Catholic side, some Catholic teachings. And then now I'm hearing and seeing, and I know God's going to, I know this for a fact, that God's going to move me into divorce ministry at some point. Not right now. Right now I'm working with teens who are going through divorce, which I feel like God has really helped in that area to bring glory out of the sadness. But I will say they're coming, they're popping up. It's a lot slower than I would like, but you're finding them now. It's not such a stigma, or I guess there's no taboo, because it's the reality even within our Catholic churches.
Do you think it kind of helps you dealing with those teens that are going through divorce? Maybe it's some therapeutic in some ways for you?
I know that. I know for a fact. Every time I talk about it and share my story, it hurts a little less. And every time, Rudy, a teenager comes up to me crying because that's what they're going through, or that's what they've been through, and thanking me for sharing, then I know God is bringing the resurrection out of that crucifixion, you know, and it's beautiful. I remember one of my earliest talks, I was on a retreat with Dr. Alex Gote, who you've had here. And I felt compelled to apologize. I felt, I try to listen for the Spirit anytime I'm giving a talk, but in this particular one with probably 100 kids, I said, you know, on behalf of your mother or your parents, anyone here, if you have not heard these words yet, I want to apologize. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. As a mother, I'm sorry that you have had to endure that as a child. And the kids coming up and embracing me in tears, you know, just, oh my gosh, it was just very beautiful. I mean, it's a very painful, it's a reality that we need to do better in that area of taking care of broken families.
I mean,
sorry.
No, just hearing.
Now I know what the tissue's for.
Hearing you talk about it just makes me think about my daughter and my relationship with my daughter. And until this, it's been, oh my gosh, over 20 years, and I still apologize to her. Like, so sorry that, you know, you're getting to me.
Sorry, Rudy.
So let's go back to getting your life back together. So the oil and gas, right?
Yes.
So you said
God provided that opportunity through a friend, and for about 4 years, that's what I was doing. It was a contract position, so I did a lot of work from home. It was online.
Yeah.
It was incredible. I could take them to school. I could pick them up after school. I could be at field trips. I could be present in their lives when their whole world was shaken. And I really thank God for that I thank my friend Evan for providing that opportunity. And for the time, that was how God helped me through probably the most painful time of that part of the journey. And it was around probably 3.5 years into that I met my current husband and Mike. And, he lived in Corpus. I had been going down a lot after the divorce. I just needed to be around my family. I couldn't move there. The divorce decree kept me in the Houston area. But I was going down as often as I could, either with or without the kids, to be around my parents. And I met him down there, and the relationship was a friendship at first. He was getting his life back together in a very different way. He was always a very incredible man, but he was spending a lot more time with his family as well. And we actually crossed paths at Adoration, which is always a nice way to kind of connect with someone.
Oh, yeah.
But I was leading worship down there at OLCC, the Our Lady of Corpus Christi. And he had been brought there by his family. And so I played Oceans, and I remember he said, I have to meet her, And so we were talking a lot. We were actually doing Bible studies over the phone together. We were praying together as friends. And anytime I had my kids down there, he was on the floor playing video games or playing board games with them, never once looking back at me to see if I was watching. You know what I mean? It was kind of that, I have to say, I was not going to date after my marriage broke apart, and the kids were too little, and I wasn't about to try to insert someone else into that life.
You have to be careful about that.
Extremely careful, and I'm super paranoid. I grew up watching like CSI and Law and Order. I'm not, that's not for me and not for my kids, And then God, I know he laughs, I know that saying, we make plans and God laughs. But I think he fell in love with the kids before he fell in love with me. And I feel like watching him with the boys, I fell in love with him whether I wanted to or not. It was kind of this, God brought us together when we both needed that. And God continues to help us in our marriage now. And the boys, I don't know what they'd do without him. I mean, don't get me wrong. They love their dad. They have a good relationship with their dad. But Mike has just, now I'm going to get emotional for a different reason. But my boys just love him so much. And they've become teenagers with him. And it's really awesome watching the dynamic. But that was when I got a call that Holy Rosary Catholic Church was looking for a full-time youth minister. And Mike had proposed and planned on moving up to Houston after we got married. And I called him right away and I said, I think this is the only time that I could ever say yes to this kind of an offer, to go work for a church, knowing that you're going to work when you get up here. We're going to be a family. We'll have 2 incomes. And he said, I mean, it sounds like God is inviting you back, into what you've always wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so, I felt like at that point, oh, God, in all of our unfaithfulness, he is always faithful. And he brought me back where I always wanted to be.
It's like he's always waiting for us.
Yes. But I will say that the oil and gas time, I know that was him too.
Oh, yeah.
I know that was him taking care of me and my family. And then when the time was right, he said, let's get you back where you belong,
He's got his plan.
Yeah.
Now, what was the whole, because I'm not too familiar with the whole annulment process.
Gosh.
How does that go?
It's painful.
Really?
In the best possible way. So I was at St. Justin Martyr when, probably 2 years after the divorce was finalized. And my ex-husband was already remarried, and Father Paul and Deacon Corney at St. Justin, they just were always telling me, whenever you're ready, we can help you with that.
Okay.
And I'm so thankful for their patience, because the processing of needing that was painful in itself. And I didn't want to admit that my marriage hadn't been sacramental. I didn't even really believe that, because to me, it had been. I believed that was the sacramental marriage. And when you're approaching an annulment process, you're kind of admitting to yourself, it wasn't. or you're having to ask the tribunal, I believe that maybe this wasn't sacramental. And that's really hard. That's really hard. A good Catholic girl wants to believe that her first marriage was sacramental, that it was in her heart. It was in my heart, And then I will say that it was gutting getting through the paperwork. So there are pages and pages of questions they ask you, and they're very personal, and they're very deep, and they feel very private sometimes.
Really? What types of questions?
They ask, was there cheating involved? Was there times when, just very personal questions. Was there abuse? Was there any time during the process before getting married that you feel like you maybe should have known there were red flags, that maybe did you not enter into this sacramentally? And then it asks for a lot of anecdotes, a lot of stories, a lot of, how was it in the beginning of the marriage? How was it when you started having children? How was it when you did start fighting? Did you ever seek counseling, and things like that?
So it's not just filling out paperwork, it's reliving the whole thing.
Oh, yes.
In
My
detail.
Answers were 17 and a half pages long typed.
Wow.
Yeah. And they want all of that information. And I think they go through it, and they really want to discern whether to grant the annulment or not. And so I cried a lot. I would type some answers and then I would have to take a break. It was therapy in and of itself. And I would have to say it was healing. It was very healing to relive. I wasn't reliving it to bring back the pain. It was reliving it to go through the healing of it. And so.
Yeah, because you're filling it out and you're like, okay, this is part of my process of moving on.
Well, I think that's the wisdom of it. And I think that we have a lot of Catholics that are avoiding the annulment process because they think that it's going to invalidate their children, that their children are then illegitimate because their marriage has been annulled. And that's where I know eventually I'm going to be getting into divorce, ministry and annulment ministry, because there is such a beauty in the annulment process. Has always. I mean, are we really surprised? The Catholic Church, in all of her wisdom, is telling us that the reason it's asking us to do something is for our benefit. I think if we didn't have so many Catholics scared of approaching that, I think that they're kind of stunted in the healing process because they're avoiding it, because they don't want to endure that part of the journey. And it is so important.
So when you fill out this paperwork, do you meet with someone and talk about your answers?
Well, Father Paul and Deacon Corney would help me through reading through it.
Okay.
We also had our youth minister at the time. He had discerned out of the seminary, but while he was a seminarian, he had worked at the tribunal for a while. So he kind of knew what they're also looking for and how to answer. They said, if you continually point the finger at your ex-husband, that's not accepting the part of, you can only speak for yourself. So I can't say, oh, it was my ex-husband's fault that we got divorced. It was my ex-husband's fault that I'm even looking for an annulment. I have to look inside myself. It's introspection. It's all about myself and where I was, spiritually and physically and mentally. And so that, I think, was a tremendous help as well, that I couldn't just throw the blame on him. I had to see where was I responsible for any kind of, maybe any part that was unhealthy in the marriage. And so that was good for me too, because again, if we are looking for a scapegoat, we're never really going to deal with the healing. You have to look at, where's my part in this? Where do I move forward? How do I heal? And then so that you don't take it into the next relationship as well. So, so Deacon Corney and Father Paul would help me through that, as well as that former youth minister at St. Justin's. So, yeah, and I would say that Deacon Corney, I'm the oldest of 4 kids, and I've always been a people pleaser. So when he received my paperwork and he said, can I keep a copy? I mean, I'm going to black out all your name, but this is the best one I've ever seen. This is the most complete. This is the most thorough. This is really a great, you've put together a great response or a great submission. And I thought, oh, yay, like pat myself on the back. I got an A+ from Deacon Corny. So that kind of fed my inner child. Oh my gosh. Silly.
So you turn that in, and then what happens next? Do you just wait for it to process? Is that how it goes?
It gets submitted and it gets put in the pile. I mean, apparently there are so many submissions in the tribunal, and I think they're getting better at, I don't mean to say it like they're not doing their part, but there's just so much to go through. And when you have one like mine that's 17 and a half pages long to get through, I can understand why it takes a while to get through each person's application.
So who's the tribunal? Is it, who's part of that? Is it like our bishops or archbishop?
The Metropolitan Tribunal. I honestly, I feel bad that I don't even know an answer to that. I just know that I remember that seminarian saying he was assigned to the tribunal, and there were very few of them that worked on annulments.
Oh, wow.
So I don't believe that the bishop is actually sitting there reading the paperwork.
Yeah,
I think it's a priest.
Take a lot of time.
Yes, I think it's a priest, and then some, the ladies in the office, because I remember talking to a couple ladies when I would check on the progress. And then they're just the people who are reading it. And so it's probably a committee of some kind, but I don't think it's very big. And then it goes to the bishop, or then goes, I don't know the official process. I just remember sitting there for, I think it took 1.5 years from start to finish.
Oh, wow. I'm thinking now, I'm wondering if at any point they're going to get AI involved in it. You know what I mean? Get some computer program to sift
AI.
through.
I said, who's AI? Sorry.
No,
AI.
Right? Yeah, right. Some kind of computer program to
You're going to trigger me now even bringing up AI. But, I would hope so. I would hope that there could be some kind of way.
Just to make it faster.
Yes, at least the initial application process. I would understand that they'd want a person reading maybe the questions and responses just to get the people response, the person response. But yeah, there's got to be a better way. But I will say,
maybe like there's a red flag. Oops. Yeah. Okay. I will notice it right away that this is a red flag.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, I was going through this when Pope Francis was kind of making some changes in the annulment process, making it less expensive, which apparently back in the day, it cost an arm and a leg to even apply for an annulment, and not anymore. So
that's what I heard. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm grateful for that, for having experienced it during that time.
I think apparently had to hire counselors and all of this stuff, and hire different people to
that would
go
make
through
sense.
Sessions and all of that. Yeah, that's what I think.
Oh, way back, yes. Yes. And I mean, I think that that's still important, is making sure you're talking to someone through all of this. But I feel like I had really good support system in my parents, in Deacon Corny and Father Paul. And I had the religious side of it as well, the Catholic perspective. And I feel like it was just as painful as it was just a really, really good process.
So you said that you hesitated first until you were ready. When was that one point that you knew, I'm ready to start this paperwork? Was it just a gradual thing that you realized, oh, I think I'm ready? Or was there a moment when you realized, I think I can get the ball rolling on this, I'm ready now?
There's not a single moment where I knew without a shadow of a doubt. Because even when I started the process, even when I received the paperwork, I downloaded it, I printed it, I did not look at it again for probably 3 or 4 weeks.
Oh, wow.
Okay. And so then I had to process that. So I'm kind of a slow processor when it comes to things like that. I needed to process the fact that I had this paperwork in my hand and this was real now. But having people on my side saying, this will be good for you. This will be good. And I have to say, Deacon Corny, he let me cry with him. He let me laugh with him. He explained the process. He was exactly what I needed at that time. So there was no light switch moment type of thing. It really was a gradual process, and I had to do things in steps. I mean, it took me weeks to finish the paperwork because like I said, I had to take breaks. I would answer some questions, and then I would say, I need to go listen to worship music, or I need to go play with my kids. I need to not be just sitting in this. So it was.
Speaking of your kids, how did they handle the whole process? It was only actually when I was getting ready to marry Mike that we even started talking about it, because if you think about it, they're 16, 15, and 13 now. They were 6, 4, and 3 about when
when we got divorced. And so their entire life has been a process of figuring this out to their different developmental stages. So explaining the annulment was interesting. You have to do it at a level that they can understand.
Yes.
And they never once thought it meant that they would be illegitimate children. I'm just going to say kids don't think like that. And I had to explain the theology really to their level of why we only get married once, what it means to be a sacramental marriage, and then what it means to have an annulment so that you can get remarried again in the church if you ever wanted that. So for them, the divorce was the reality that they knew. That's the reality they knew. So the annulment was more of just now the church says it's okay for you to get married again. Okay. I mean, really, it was, they're boys too. So they were just like, okay.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, that was the reality that they kind of sort of grew up in.
Yeah. They don't have a lot of memories of that first marriage. So their life has always been that separation.
Now, we said that, we had to kind of be careful, when you were dating, your husband. Was there a moment when you knew that, okay, I think, ready to get remarried?
That's a good question too. I wish I had more light switch moments like that. I think that again was a process of prayer and discernment, and then kind of feeling the boys out too, my kids. There came a point where they didn't want a life without Michael. And so marriage was that next natural step where he could then be living with us. He could be not visiting us, coming up to Houston from Corpus and us going down there to see him. And that's when I kind of knew that I think this is okay. I think this is what God wants. And I wanted them to be around him more. He's got an incredibly calm spirit about him. And I'm very energetic and kind of high-strung sometimes. So we have a good balance between us, and I think it's good for the boys to see that. And I always wanted them seeing a healthy marriage. I always wanted them seeing a good relationship so that they can model that in their own.
Yes.
If they're called to it. But I was also ready to just be a single mom for their entire childhood. I really was. I was ready to make that. I don't know if you would even call it a sacrifice. I was willing to accept that as my journey, if that was what it was going to be. So I really think God kind of pushed me into remarriage. And it's been great. It's been amazing and especially good for the boys. So
how long have you been at Holy Rosary now?
Oh, well, okay. So I came into Holy Rosary right before COVID in 2019,
oh, that's
August
fun,
of 2019.
Right before
it was
COVID.
Like, welcome to the church. And then now the church is gone, So, and they had a faith formation coordinator before that, but they didn't have a youth minister. So I was introduced to the parish, and then the parish was whisked away, so to speak, when churches were kind of closed. So it's been a journey and it's been beautiful. But yeah, so I think I'm approaching, what's the math on that, August? Is it 5 or 4?
Like 4 or 5 years, somewhere around there. Yeah.
Ish. Yeah.
So do you work mainly with teens now, or do you have the whole...
Okay, I started out as the high school youth minister.
Okay.
I kind of inherited junior high youth ministry during COVID. It was a natural addition anyways, because I really wanted them plugging into high school faith formation when the time came, and I wanted FaceTime. I wanted to catch them in junior high and get them excited about high school youth ministry. And we've probably, I think when I started there, we had 6 in junior high youth ministry, and now we have a steady 35 to 40 that come weekly. So that is good growth, I believe. I'm just going to keep claiming that, keep speaking that. And so during COVID or right after, I kind of inherited elementary as well, and the sacraments that follow along with those ages. And so now I kind of cover elementary, I guess pre-K through 12th grade, if you want to call it that. So yeah, faith formation, youth ministry, and the sacraments for the youth. Yeah.
Now,
think I've got it all.
Adrian, the principal at the school.
Yes, Adrian, I love her.
She's referred to your parish as like this little diamond in the rough.
Oh, yes,
And-
I love that she called it that.
What are the challenges for you for a small program, a youth ministry program, as compared to something like here at St. Faustina, where it's gigantic?
Well, I've heard that a lot of the challenges are the same. I've heard that, just because the numbers might be greater, it's still hard to find enough volunteers or enough resources or enough. And I think we just have that at a smaller scale, but it's the same challenge. It's the same issues that we're facing. Over there at Holy Rosary, and I'll be honest, before I got the phone call, I didn't even know Holy Rosary was there. I had probably passed it in the entirety of my time in Texas, which is now 17 years, countless times because my parents live in Corpus. So I literally would drive 723 to 59 right there and apparently pass it in the, in the side mirrors, but I didn't know it was there. It's in the neighborhood. It's deep within.
It's kind of hidden.
It's very hidden, yes. And I think that it's kind of cool to be hidden. It's kind of cool to be off the beaten path. But there's a challenge in that as well, is that we have Our Lady Guadalupe literally next door. And that's mainly Hispanic because they do offer Spanish masses. And so the challenge that I've seen is as the area gets more diverse, we're kind of mixing very well. I like mixing, which is really good for Holy Rosary. I will say it has a Czech background, but we don't want to be just Czech. We don't want to be just anything. We want to make sure everyone's welcome. So that's a challenge anywhere as well. But being able to feed every culture that comes in as well and we just started offering quinceañera blessings, and I am so excited because I grew up in Texas too, and I'm so excited. We did our first one last year, and it was to a girl who's been with Holy Rosary since she was born, born, baptized, and it just was perfect that our first quinceañera blessing was her. I get emotional thinking about it. So we're attempting to feed all of the melting pot. It really is becoming a melting pot there at Holy Rosary. And like Adrian said, a diamond in the rough. But I would just say that that's because we're off the beaten path. You don't see us from the highway. You don't see us from the main roads. You have to know where you're going. You have to know it's there so that you can find it. So you
said that you probably see yourself in the future doing some kind of divorce ministry. How far into the future are you looking?
Oh, I'm not ready to leave youth ministry yet. I'm not ready.
But it may happen in the future.
I think so. I think my kids are just now entering into their confirmation ages, which is so fun because I have been volunteering with this age since before they were born, and now they're getting confirmed. My oldest son is getting confirmed in August, and then my second son next year, and then I've got a 7th grader, so he'll get there eventually. But it is so much fun kind of coming full circle, having served in this ministry for so very long, almost half my life, and now my kids are kind of entering into that part of their journey, and it's very fun.
Now that you mentioned that, maybe after your youngest goes through confirmation,
I was kind of heading towards that I would feel like I could add that to my plate. I will only leave youth ministry when God tells me, and I really believe that He moves us, that everything has a season. And so I don't know that I'll be in youth ministry forever. I don't want to be. I want to go wherever He wants me. And that's that missionary spirit that I think my parents instilled in me, whether they liked it or not, that I just want to move with the Spirit. I want to move with God, and wherever that takes me and whatever ministry that takes me, because I also want to work with people in nursing homes, and then I want to work with special needs too. So I'm all over the place. I know that God, gave me a heart for all these things, but I also know that I have to say no sometimes, because otherwise it'd be a little overwhelming to do it all, or to try to do it all.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's looking at the prospect of divorce, or who just had it dropped in their lap?
Oh my gosh, that is often how it is.
No idea. It's like blindsided by it. What would you tell them?
I will say that And I am going to say this now, if the divorce process has already begun, there's often not much you can do about it. But if there's any hope at all to salvaging the marriage, I would say that would be the number one priority. There are retreats out there like Retrovi, which is a Catholic, really emergency retreat for couples that feel like divorce is the next step.
Oh, what's it called?
Retrovi.
Retrovi.
Yes. And I went in Dallas. It didn't help us, but that doesn't mean that it won't help other people. So there are resources out there where I would say if you can save the marriage, save the marriage. Mm-hmm. That it really, it's just really sad how many broken families there are. If you can't save it, if you've done it, everything, and I want people to be able to look back and say, I did everything I could.
Yeah.
I tried. I did try. And if you can't, then get yourself around people that help you through it. So I would say that the biggest challenge that I had was finding other miserable people during that time. That was when I was making a lot of bad decisions because I was finding other people who were lost in their misery rather than finding people who were going to help me out of the muck. Spiritually speaking, emotionally speaking. So force yourself to be around the people that are going to lift you up and not enjoy the time down in the darkness with you, I hope that's not too vague. So and then finding a deacon or a priest who can help you eventually if you do feel called to get an annulment, just to not be afraid of that and to not be afraid of, we're really so far past. We're in 2024. There should not be a stigma that your children are going to be illegitimate if your marriage is annulled. Mm-hmm. Let's get that out of our heads. Let's get that out of our heads. I really feel strongly about that. I really want to help a lot of people who are living with their new spouse without an annulment. We have that in our churches. Yeah. And they're not going to communion. Get an annulment. Yeah. Oh, I almost did the banging. Get an annulment. Do it. It's so healing. Don't be afraid, but find those spiritual shepherds that can help you through it.
What do you normally say to kids who are going through, parents getting divorced or annulled?
Almost the same thing. Almost the same thing. It can be easy to sit in the misery. Mm-hmm. It can be, I will say that all three of my boys went through a period of blaming themselves through the different stages of development, natural human development. There comes a time when every child asks himself, is it my fault? Mm. And it could be 3 years ago, 5 years ago, and they think, well, I was the last one born. It has to be my fault. Or was I too bad in kindergarten that it created a rift in the marriage? I mean, their brain really, we all do that. We kind of figure, what could I have done differently to save it? And the kids go through that as well. So telling them that it's not their fault, telling them that they need to find a good support network, telling them to find the friends that are going to help them through it and not let them wallow, but also they need to feel the feelings. I mean, the retreats where I'm able to share that part of my journey, it's very healing for them. And I think putting themselves in front of Jesus, whether it's adoration, exposition, or the tabernacle, put yourself in front of Jesus. Don't stop going to Mass. Don't stop going. Because it's just like going to the gym. The less frequently you go, the easier it is to not go. So keep going to Mass.
What would you say to friends of a family that's going through a divorce or an annulment? What would you say?
Oh, that's a good question.
What is good advice or something that they shouldn't do as well?
I lost a lot of friends during the divorce. And I think because a lot of my friends were Catholic, and I don't think they knew how to help. They didn't know how to approach it, especially because, their marriage was good and they didn't want to, throw that in my face or whatever the case may be. And whatever process they were going through, they did it away from me. And I will not blame them ever, because how do you deal with that? How do you help someone through that if you've never watched someone go through that before?
Yeah.
So I would just say, don't disappear. Don't let them push you away. The friends. Don't let the couple push you away. And if you do have to choose one or the other, I mean, that can be hard too, but just stick with them and be there with them through the pain, through the tears, through the sorrow, so that you can be there through the joy as well.
Do you think
don't disappear?
Some of the friends just decided, I don't want to choose, so let's just keep our distance from both? Is that what you...
Well, it didn't help that I kind of made myself unavailable. So I will say they just stopped pushing, and I get it. You know, they stopped asking me out for coffee and things like that because I was always like, no. So I would say don't give up on us. You know, don't stop asking, because one day we will be ready for that cup of coffee. One day we will be ready to go to Mass with you. One day we will be ready to sit down and talk with you. Don't stop reaching out. And that can be, I know, exhausting. It's a lot to ask, but everybody processes at a different time frame. And I have friends that I've reached out to since then, and just, you know, your kids look great. Your kids are so grown up. You know, our kids were babies together, but I love seeing your family. I'm so proud. Like, I have a friend whose son is going to Franciscan, and I just reached out and said, oh, it's such a great time there. I'm so happy for him. You know, so I'm not afraid now to restart those relationships as well. And I would never, ever blame a friend for, you know, kind of, I wouldn't even call it disappearing, you know, because they're probably dealing with their own things as well. And it can be scary, because if you are having trouble in your marriage and you see somebody's marriage implode, you kind of say, oh my gosh, I don't want that to happen to me and my husband. Let's make sure we're working on ourselves so that doesn't happen. I get it. I get it. I totally get it.
Thank you so much for coming in. And I know
welcome.
some of these questions and some of the stories that you tell must have been really hard to get through.
I love sharing it, though. I love sharing it. And I want to be available for people who need help through that process. Yeah.
This is kind of surreal for me. I didn't tell you this, but it's like I'm seeing you in 3D now, because I'm used to seeing you on the live stream.
Oh, you watch my Chaplet Mondays?
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times.
Aw, thank you. That's very sweet. I know. So now it's Technicolor, like three-dimensional.
It's on the Facebook page.
Yes, on our Holy Rosary Facebook page. And I have to thank Father Orrin for that, for kind of asking us to reach out to the people during COVID when they were all home, and kind of asked all of us left. There were 3 of us left, Father Orrin, Leanne, and myself, kind of trying to pray with people online. And I remember the youth office just thanking us for staying connected to our parishioners, the Archdiocesan Youth Office, just saying we were doing such a good job, and it just felt like good to get a pat on the back. But yeah, I started praying chaplets with the people on Monday nights, and we still do it today, 3 years later. I was counting my chaplets the other day. We've done 187 unique chaplets, and really this stemmed again from youth ministry and confirmation, being connected to the saints. I love learning about the saints. It's kind of a mini obsession. I mean, I'm no Meg Hunter Kilmer. I'm not sure if you know.
Yes.
She's incredible. I am in awe of that woman. But I'm learning snippets about a lot of saints, and I am just loving it. And I share that with my teens in hopes that they won't just pick the same saints every year, you know? So kind of trying to introduce them to the saints, and then how to put them in our corner, how to really, you know, kind of fill our toolbox with the ones that are already sitting in the glory of God.
So that's every Monday at what time is it?
Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Yeah, we go live on the Holy Rosary Facebook page, and I just share a little story, and then we pray their chaplet. So
I got to be honest, a couple of times while talking to you, I'm trying to imagine the bookcase behind you.
With all my saints.
Yes, exactly.
Yes. My saint plushes, yes. I told my husband, I said, for birthdays and Christmases, can you just continue stocking my bookshelf with the saint plushes? I'm a little bit obsessed. Yes.
More power to you and that little ministry of yours as well. And you know, everything you've got going on. God bless you.
Keep us in your prayers. Keep my boys in your prayers.
Oh, definitely.